Well, hello, good evening and welcome to the program. This is Daily Politics on Trust TV. I'm Abdullahi Ahmed. Thank you most kindly for joining us. Tonight on the program, we examine and re-examine the reactions trailing the signing of the new Electoral Act for 2026 by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. The president's assent has split public opinion. As one can imagine, with supporters arguing the quick approval keeps the country on track ahead of the next general election, civil society groups, political opponents, however, warn that parts of the amendment could weaken public confidence in Nigeria's electoral process. The controversy centers on the inclusion of a manual option, the provisor, in the transmission of election results, a provision critics say may undermine the push for electronic transmission of results. But both the executive and the National Assembly have defended their position, saying the changes follow due process. So all tonight, we'll be speaking with someone who has not just an opinion, but an understanding of what is playing out and what it means for Nigeria's fledgling democracy. But first, let's bring you up to speed with the day's latest political developments.
The Rivers State House of Assembly has suspended impeachment proceedings against Governor Siminalayi Barr and his deputy Ngozi Odu. The decision poses a process that has faced legal and political hurdles since it began in early January. The development followed a meeting between President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Governor Barr, and the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike. The meeting held at the President's official residence in Abuja. The House of Representatives has apologized to protesters affected by tear gas fired at the National Assembly earlier this week. Lawmakers described the incident as regrettable and said a review of the circumstances is underway. House spokesman Akin Rotimi delivered the apology at a press conference in Abuja while reviewing the Electoral Act recently signed by President Tinubu. The event was organized by the Kuka Center and Yega Africa, alongside the International Press Center, TAF Africa, Center for Media and Society, Nigerian Women Trust Fund, and Elect Her. The Area Consultative Forum has reacted to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's swift assent to the 2026 electoral bill, calling it a timely move ahead of the 2027 general elections. The Northern Sociocultural Group, however, asked for the immediate release of the full text of the law. It said Nigerians have so far seen only snippets of the document. ACF National Publicity Secretary Professor Tukur Muhammad Baba stated the position in Kaduna. He noted that although the assent appeared hurried, the law deals with electoral timelines that cannot afford delay. An upper Sharia court in Shahuchi, Kano, presided over by Judge Muhammad Sani, has commenced hearing a suit against Senator Rufai Sani Hanga. The case centers on alleged unpaid campaign services valued at about 124.8 million naira. The suit was filed by Isa Adome Doya and others, who claimed they carried out agreed campaign assignments during the senator's election period but have not been paid. Proceedings opened with the plaintiff's counsel outlining claims for compensation for services rendered.
Right, some of the day's latest developments in politics. Now, let's turn our attention back to our conversation of the day, which has been the conversation of the week, conversation of the month, and perhaps conversation of the year, because the 2026 Electoral Act is already in place, signed with immediate effect by Mr. President on Wednesday this week. And as you can imagine, the reactions have been swift, critical, to say the least, as Nigerians consider the implications of this new act on the forthcoming general elections in 2027. Let's bring in our guest. He's Prince Barrister Adewole Adebayo, a signatory of the resolution of the Movement for Credible Elections on the newly signed law and the 2023 presidential candidate of the Social Democratic Party, the SDP. Prince, it's good to see you again. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. Good to see you, and God bless Nigeria.
Amen to that. Obviously, opinions remain divided about whether this is the right step in the right direction and whether this is what Nigerians deserve. What do you make of the polarization on this particular conversation, and what does that say about where we are right now as a nation?
Okay, let us understand that in a democracy, differences in opinions are not the problem. That is why we are in different political parties, competing from the same offices. If we had the same opinion, we'd probably be a one-party state. So I don't want us to confuse differences in opinion to proper and improper behavior. What the ruling party has done through the Senate and the majority, I believe, in the House of Representatives has done is to stab democracy in the heart. There are differences in opinion regarding so many things. But do you know of any country, any democracy, where there are differences in opinion regarding whether there should be free, fair, and credible election? You don't have that. Do you have any country whose politicians disagree regarding transparency, accuracy, reliability? Now, that is being seen here, where the whole purpose of the disagreement and the rush is not whether we want different things to be included in the act. It is that we had reached a consensus, both the House of Representatives and the Senate, all 19 political parties. Majority of the House Committee on Electoral Reform is APC. Majority of the Senate Committee on Electoral Reform is APC. And in the House of Representatives, remarkably, they had done their first reading, committee, second reading, and third reading. In the Senate, they had done first reading, committee, and second reading, and they had gone executive session as part of their third reading before the people I consider to be saboteurs of democracy came in and started to cherry pick clauses which they think are too transparent and too independent. Particularly, clause which is now section 60 sub 3, which has to do with electronic transmission of results simultaneously with giving that result to the agent of each political party. That has been the way INEC itself has been conducting business. The only reason why it became a subject of National Assembly legislation at all was that in some cases, including prominently in the 2023 elections, when these results are to be transmitted, INEC will say something went wrong with the IRF or something, and we don't see that result. And on many occasions, when you see the final result, it doesn't resemble the result in the polling unit. So, and when litigation followed, the Supreme Court says, well, you can come to us to complain about IRF, about electronic transmission, about all of that, when it has been included in the Electoral Act. Whereas for INEC guidelines, we as the courts are not to enforce INEC guidelines. This is just for INEC to guide itself. It's not the law of the land. Do you understand the point? So now, it is not controversial. So we went to put it in the law, and those who have been benefiting from the opaqueness of this situation, from the unreliability of it, from the fact that they could manipulate it, now decided to first eliminate it completely, which the Senate did, and said, we retain the old provision, which was unacceptable even to the majority of the House Committee on Senate, even to the majority of the Senate in the executive session. Now, everybody went on the street, Senate amended it, and put a proviso. And that proviso is unparliamentarian, it is poorly written, and it is a time bomb meant to undo the main provision, which means that you are saying to a driver, nobody should go past the speed limit. The speed limit is 100 kilometers per hour, provided that if you are in a hurry and you find it inexpedient to obey, then whatever speed you choose is the right speed. Then no driver is going to obey the traffic rule.
You think that analogy is a fair characterization?
That is a better way than even what they are provided there. The National Assembly cannot legislate witchcraft into technology. When we have been using this technology for some time, we observe the problems that the technology has been having. Bandwidth, internet has never been any of the problems. Because when INEC was designing the IRF and designing the beavers, they wanted it to be able to work offline. So that to capture the result at the polling unit, even if you have zero bandwidth, zero internet, offline, the beavers is going to capture it. What is left is for the beavers to see signal and send it. So you can capture it simultaneously whether there's bandwidth or not. They know it. This technology was introduced as far back as the time of Professor Maurice Iwu in INEC. And then it became what we call card reader. And we went to court, remember 2015, went to court everywhere. I argued some cases in the Supreme Court. I lost some cases of my clients because I went all the way to the Supreme Court to say INEC did not use beavers. They were just allowing anybody to vote. The Supreme Court gave a judgment. I think one of them I can remember, Emeho versus Okowa. I argued that in the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, look, we understand what you are saying. The beavers is a good machine, card reader, but it is not in the Electoral Act. It's in the guidelines. And we don't care about the guideline because INEC is not a legislative body.
All right.
So there is no differences of opinion. What President Tinubu has done is to show that he's the ringleader of those determined to rig elections. And he's an anti-technology president, and he's a president that does not read, because you have substantively 156 sections with annexures. You have 123 pages. The president did not even study. He received the transmission, no bother to read, no bother to study, no consultation with anyone.
Do you know that for a fact?
I know that for a fact because I'm a lawyer. I'm also a draftsman. Before the National Assembly could arrive at where they arrived at, we participated with them. They wrote letters to us. We all went there. We did public hearing everywhere. And it went through committee, thousands of eyes have looked into this. Then you saw the Deputy Speaker going through the sessions, even though when his members were raising point of order, he wasn't reading anything. He was just hammering away like a maniacal carpenter, banging on wood, or like an auctioneer, auctioning democracy away, one page, bam. Doesn't matter what you say. Now, the president, seeing the hue and cry you heard when the House was apologizing to us for tear gassing us. This is the person I contested against. He said he won the election, he's now president, and he's sending tear gas to tear gas me. For what? Because we want good laws. So now, instead of the president to take time to study it, in one day, he said, I've signed it to law, like a military decree. Doesn't make any sense.
Okay, if you have to put a finer point to it, how does this new law handicap people in the opposition exactly?
It's not the people in the opposition that is the problem. I want us to understand.
They seem to be the ones making the loudest noise.
We are making it out of love for the country. It is not about opposition winning election. If APC wants to win, they should have the confidence that they can still win in a free, fair election. What we are saying is that don't rig the rules. We do not like a situation where a clear opportunity has arisen by way of technology to solve an election historical error, where the largest democracy supposedly in the black world, we are the India of black people. And we are still discussing, you rig election, you don't rig election. You have a president whose legitimacy is suspect for two reasons. Majority of the voters did not come out to vote. And even if we take that the vote allocated to him by INEC is the vote he got, it is still a minority. 8 million out of 89 million votes. Doesn't even have 10% of the voters.
He has a majority of the vote cast.
The majority of the vote cast is an indictment of the electoral system in the sense that there is no democracy that takes that. And one of the reasons is that majority of a lot of people, when we go out to campaign, have formed the impression that the ritual that takes place at that polling unit is just an academic exercise, that the elections have been determined elsewhere. And when you find irresponsible and rascally commentary from someone like Minister of FCT, even in the current area council elections that we are holding, where he says, anyone who is not with Tinubu, I will make sure they don't win the election. In the context of all of that, you need to boost the confidence of the voters to show that, look, it is what you decide in your community, in your polling unit, in your area there. The few streets that make that polling unit, whoever you vote for, rightly or wrongly, that is what INEC is going to declare. That is what we are fighting for. There is nothing in this act or provision that we are fighting for that advantages the opposition. The only thing it does is that it advantages the people so that they know that, okay, now I can beat my chest that I'm the one electing my leaders.
Yeah, but
if I go out and I cast my vote and we count the vote and the result is given and we electronically transmit it there, I can check the IRF and I can be sure I have participated. That's what we want to achieve. It's not opposition versus
I understand that point, but to the question about what could go wrong because of the new law, what exactly is your fear here, and how does this particular law engender that to happen?
Our concern is that we had an opportunity to lay to bed the ghost of changing results after it has been cast. And the Nigerian public, who lack housing, water, electricity, security, basic food, allow the government to spend their money to buy these machines. And every election cycle, every other year, every years of appropriation, government puts money on this technology. And this year, they said they want to spend 200 billion, which could have been used for the homeless, the unemployed, the downtrodden, is now being given to the elite to conduct this election, to buy machines.
Is it the elite?
It's the elite that conduct election.
I thought you would prefer to say that this is an investment in the right direction.
No.
Technology costs money.
It's an investment to strengthen the sovereignty of the people.
Right.
However, the government that expended all that money is now limiting the use of it. All of us know that the coming of X-ray machine, CT scan, MRI, all of them has enhanced our ability to detect diseases. Imagine now if the Ministry of Health says, if you want to test a patient, you can use CT scan, MRI, anything, but if NEPA takes light, you may just operate the patient without testing what disease he has. The technology is there, but that regulation is limiting the use. That is what is happening here.
I mean,
you cannot say...
Please, if you go back to 2023, for instance,
yes,
right, and you consider the thousands of litigations that followed the 2023 general election.
Yes.
I mean, no election was overturned on the grounds that, there was something wrong with the election results. So what is the basis here to now say 2027 could even be worse?
That's what we are saying. We are saying that a lot of elections that will have been overturned, let me start from the beginning. A lot of elections that would not have been controversial at all became controversial by the fact that the INEC did not use that tool of transmitting the result in real time simultaneously, even though the technological capacity was there. And INEC said, we said our people should use it. But on the field, they will give us one excuse or the other why they will not use it. Or they will say they have used it, they won't use it. When you go to court, immediately you make INEC a defendant. INEC switches to a defensive mode. They will not explain anything. They will not do anything. They will just say, I deny. And when you come to court, the court will say, we are a court of law. We enforce what the law says. The law did not say there must be a compulsory use of this equipment. Go back to you are the politicians. Go back to your assembly. Make sure those people who make laws there put the use of this machine into the law. That is why all of us got interested in it. That is the controversy. It is not about the effectiveness or otherwise of the machines. We have no doubt. We have used them in over 165 elections. By Saturday, they will have used them in about 166 elections. So that's not the issue. The issue is that the government misusing its own majority and directing their majority members to not obey the law of the land, not obey the constitution that guarantees democracy, says that go and put a proviso in the act that excuses the non-use of the beavers to transmit the result. That's what we are saying. That why are you putting that legislative excuse there? You are trying to signal to the people who are to implement that we will give you cover. Just find an excuse. And that is not correct. You say that this is a school zone. Children come out of school. So we put a speed limit of 25 kilometers per hour in a school zone. You now put a clause. You will observe the 25 kilometer speed limit in the school zone, provided that if the driver cannot see the sign, then the speed he uses is okay. Why are you encouraging every driver to say, well, I didn't see the sign? Oh, if the sign is faded, therefore, no, you don't do that. Make the law. When you make the law and make it mandatory, INEC now will train their officials to say, you know that this election will be invalidated if you don't transmit the result. So you better make sure everything works. You better make sure you transmit it. You better make sure that you are going to go to prison if you don't transmit it. And we are going to denounce you if you don't transmit it. That is how you make laws.